Ryan and I will take you to a little bit more conventional ways to what we're going to do with robotic process automation and what does it really mean for CFOs. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is it within accounting. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is and, what is the flavor of it. And then we're going to twist it a little bit back to move a little bit out of the robotic process automation and move a little bit into more about AI and large language models, and we'll give you examples. And obviously, we're going to close the session with questions. So RPA in accounting, it's a big item within the accounting world. I'll tell you that. A couple of months ago, I was down in New York City and I participated in the AAFCPAs symposium about AI and what that really means in the world of accounting. And there were people from multiple disciplines. There were, scholars, and there were, big vendors that deal with financial systems. And I'll tell you that everything was positive, and which is a good thing, right? Because artificial intelligence, it's a topic that quite often might be taken a little bit the opposite way, meaning that, oh my God, am I going to be replaced by some kind of a robot kind of thing, right? Which is not the way that we should be looking into it. And this is a tool that is having quite a lot of history. And the purpose of its purpose is to be able to help us out, do our job faster and more efficiently, and in general, help us with our day-to-day life, right? So as you can see here, some of the big items of the robotic process automation is data management, compliance and reporting, transaction processing, and integration. What these four big areas mean is that there's applications within these four areas, like how can we better handle our data? Is there some compliance that we need to comply with, and or reporting that we need to do? Well, here's definitely areas where robotic process automation can come handy and help us out big way. Transaction processing and integration. So if you have multiple systems and you need data from all the systems, instead of a person going and trying to figure it out, or going back and say, oh my God, I cannot get that because it's multiple systems. Technology nowadays is there and can help us out with these tasks. So what is robotic process automation, right? Quite a buzzword, really, right? I mean, it's people might hear it and say, oh my God, there's a robot that's going to come and, it's going to start, touching my screen and my keyboard and all that stuff. Really, if we can put it down in plain English words, it's just programs that we can utilize to do what we do on a daily basis. Not everything can be done and can be automated, but definitely there's quite a lot of applications that can come in handy, and automation can help us out with these tasks. What can we get out of it? Well, definitely it's going to be faster processing, because we want it or not, a computer is going to do certain things much faster than we do as humans. It's going to be accurate, because as long as it's being programmed appropriately, it's always going to be consistent and accurate, right? Unfortunately, once again, we humans do make mistakes, and when we do, there's rework, right? So definitely the benefit here is quite substantial. Frees us up from these tedious manual tasks, so we can go and focus on the big, more important things that we have on a daily basis. And as I said earlier, it can help us combine data from multiple sources, which is something in the past, it was pretty difficult to do. Not impossible, but pretty difficult. But now with these tools, we can do it faster and more accurately. So what, as I said earlier, what makes a good opportunity? I said, not everything can be automated. So in order to be able to do something, to consider something to be a good candidate, is that it has to be a stable process. That means that there are well-defined steps within the process, so that when a program is to be developed to do that, it knows to follow this process. And as part of the development cycle that we do is actually we do make that process flow, so we understand what's required, but then at the same time make sure that the program understands what it needs to do. It has to be a high volume, and it has to be rules-based. What that really means is the rules-based is one thing that automation cannot do is do a critical thinking. So if it's rules-based, if it's 1, make the color blue. If it's 2, make the color red, kind of thing. That's rule-based, right? It's easily followed and it's easily programmable. If it has to do something with highly decision-making process, we can play with it a little bit and make it as such that there's a human interaction to replace that critical thinking, and then the bot can take over from that. But again, at that point, it's really it comes down to us to try and figure out how we can do that. Highly repetitive, obviously, right? Because if it's something that you keep doing on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and it takes an hour, for example, you can imagine that if that could happen within a minute, you just save 59 minutes, right, out of the work that you do. And it's going to be more accurately done. You have to have test data good enough so you can test or make sure that you come up with a good solution. And you always need to be looking for the future, right? Because you don't want to build something that is going to be good enough for a year, and then you spend all the money, resources, all that good stuff. Yeah, okay, great. And then a year from now, you change something like one of the systems, and whatever you try to develop is completely now not applicable, right? So you always need to look far ahead, so you make sure that whatever you develop is going to be used for a long time. So what we're going to do here is going to try and demonstrate one of the concepts that we are working here internally as to how you could use these technologies to give feedback for your employees. And that's just a concept. Just think of it as whatever the concept is, there's analogies as to what else you could do with that. And we'll go through some of these examples. So with that, let's go into the video and see what we can do. So in this example, we see that there is a form where we can provide information that is critical for providing feedback from an employee. What you see here is actually a form that can be accessible from either a computer, it can be accessible from your phone, for example. So easily being accessed, you provide the necessary information as to the person, which project they worked on, what was the date, the period, and you just submit it, right? There were 5 questions there that need to be answered. The moment it was submitted, what happened, this information was electronically and completely automatically put into a SharePoint list, as you can see here, and the information was provided is there. Great, right? What does that really mean? Well, we have information that we can see historically, and we can track back if there were issues, but it's always stored in one central location. Here now, what you see is that we got the information. Well, we can take it to the next level and say, I can take this information and put it in some data analytics project and see what has happened. And what you see here is exactly that. We tapped on the data that we gathered along with some other information that we got from another system. And now we combining the data from two different systems, we can make sense as to one of our employees. And that way we can see how they perform, we can see how well they are within the organization, and then we can literally understand the culture and the dynamics of one person within the team and the firm. So all that, it's with a simple automation that we ran through. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Vassilis. So on the slide right now, we have a couple different examples of RPA applications that you could do. So I'm going to kind of talk through what each of these are and explain them a little bit more. The first one is evidence gathering. So in this example, we have a bot that is able to basically take a list of names and it can go onto a website. In this case, it's searching for free meal eligibility for charter schools. So this is an example that we have done in practice for some of our charter schools where we have a list of names and we have to go search if they are eligible for a free lunch lookup. Prior to the bot being developed, you'd pretty much just have a person taking each name, copying and pasting into the search, finding the relevant field on the screen, and then recording eligible or ineligible. In this example, a bot can go in, you basically just give it the list of names and you tell it to run, and it'll run a report for you, searching all of those lists of names and then filling out a template that basically says the person's name and then are they eligible or ineligible based on the criteria on the website. In a situation like this, it might take someone 25, 30 minutes to go through and search each of those names. When the bot can do it, it can do it in a matter of seconds. It's not going to miss a name. It's not going to have a name misspelled or anything. And it's going to do the same process every single time. So as we do this for all of our different clients, it's something that can be easily repeatable. You're going to notice throughout a lot of these examples, they're processes that are being done the same way every single time. To go back to Vassilis' point of what makes a good automation candidate, anything where it is kind of this continuous repetitive process are really good candidates to be automated. The next one is talking about reporting. So if every single month or even every single week, you're generating a report, especially if information is coming from multiple systems and you're combining Excel sheets together, or you're combining different tabs together to pull certain information off of it, and the process is being done the same way every single month, especially something like reconciliations. This is a process that can be automated relatively easily because you are going through that same process every single month. And once that process is automated, not only is it going to do the process for you, but it's also going to help reduce any sort of errors or anything that could be done when a human is doing something. Because to Vassilis' point, we all make mistakes, but luckily for us, most of the times the bots do not. There's also system-to-system communication. So if you historically have an Excel sheet and you're taking that Excel sheet and maybe you're uploading certain information from that Excel sheet to an ADP or any sort of employee or client portal, that process can be automated using some of our technology. We can interact with multiple different systems and have information be pulled out of one system and uploaded it to another. So that, again, you don't have someone sitting there doing that process manually. It can be done automatically, and people can really focus on the more important tasks of their day-to-day work. The same is true for data entry. So again, if you have an Excel spreadsheet and once a week or once a month you need to import that information into a different website or onto a SharePoint list, that work can be done automatically, assuming that it is that same process every single time where you have information coming off a file, going onto a website, or going into any other different service. That is something that can be automated. The next is activity-based things. So if every single month or every single week you receive an email from a vendor, that email always contains a PDF. That PDF always looks the exact same. And in the bottom right corner, it says the amount that is owed for that month. We're able to develop automations that will, every single month when that email comes in, the PDF is automatically opened, it's automatically saved, it's automatically read, and we could take the total amount due off that PDF, drop it right into an Excel file or a SharePoint list so that it's much easier for people to have access to that information versus having someone going in every single Friday, opening that PDF up, manually saving that PDF, and then manually inputting information from that PDF into an Excel spreadsheet or a SharePoint list. So again, just removing the human element out of it and also removing the potential for any human error. There's also process improvements that can be done. So in an example that you're going to see in a second, we have an employee onboarding flowchart where there was an Excel file where certain employee information would be entered by one person. That Excel file would be sent to another person and then sent to another person. Each time the file would be reviewed, additional information would be input, and then it would be reviewed again. In this process improvement, we now have a SharePoint list where information is entered. Once that initial information is entered, it's sent for basically a validation. So it goes to another person. That person will sign off on it. Once they do that, it triggers it to keep moving. So it just kind of keeps the flow of things consistent. And you now do not have to be sending those emails and relying on manual human communication between all these different processes. So what are the outcomes when you're able to apply this type of automation? So we have our positives here. We have value. So we're going to increase value because you're now using automation to save time that maybe a staff was spending 5 hours a week on. They can now spend that time focusing on some of the bigger and more important things within the organization, within their job, versus maybe a copy and paste activity or just saving files in certain locations. You're also going to have a bigger impact on your organization because now that you're finding more value in some of the work that you're going to do, you can focus on the work that really drives the impact of the organization. This is a nonprofit, and all of our nonprofits have very important missions. They don't need to be spending time on the small things that can be automated. We want you to be spending time on stuff that actually matters, and that's really going to allow you to make an impact on the organization and the communities that your organization benefits. And it's also going to create efficiencies, and everybody likes efficiencies. It's really what we look for on a day-to-day basis is how can we do our jobs more efficiently so we can get the most out of our days. So those are all the positive outcomes of it. What are some of the things that are going to be reduced? We're going to first off reduce errors. As we've said multiple times in this presentation, the bots don't make mistakes as humans do. You're not going to find that human error of a simple copy and paste into the wrong spot, or I typed a 3 instead of a 4 when I was copying and pasting or typing a number in, because the bot is not going to make those mistakes for us. That is also going to help reduce the level of effort and duration that certain tasks take. You might have a task that took 15 minutes before. A bot can now do that in 5 seconds. You've now saved 14 and a half minutes. You can go on to do the more important stuff about your day. And with all of that, it's going to reduce frustration. When you don't have to spend a half hour, 45 minutes copying and pasting information or saving files to a folder just because that's where certain files need to be saved for something, and you can have bots doing that, it's going to reduce the overall frustration of some of those more mundane tasks, and again, really allow you to focus on what really matters and the real impact that you're trying to have with your organization. With that, we are going to move on to another polling question. So our second poll is, what is the current level of process automation at your organization? So I'm sure there are people out there who nothing is automated. There might be organizations out there that have a lot of automation going on and other organizations in between. So just kind of a general overall, how are you using automation? Is there a lot of it going on? Is there not a lot of it going on? And as you think about this polling process, think about what are the procedures or processes within your organization that you could start to automate if you really haven't done a lot of this work yet. I'm sure that every person out there can think of at least one thing where it's a very strategic process of you do one thing, then the next, and that is something that a bot is a really good candidate for. So I will leave this poll open for another few seconds, and then we'll move on to the first of a couple of examples that I have. All right. So this first example here is an example mainly sitting in Excel. And pretty much what you're going to see is you have 2 columns of data on the left and 2 columns of data on the right, as you can see in the picture in front of you. What this example is going to show is pretty much a reconciliation between your information on the left and your information on the right. Anytime it finds a match, it's going to show that match. And anytime it finds something that doesn't match up, it's also going to flag that. And it's going to take all that information and put it into a new template that basically shows if you have a match or not. So I just started it. And as you can see, we have some information on the sheet here, a couple hundred lines of information. And you can, again, think of this as a reconciliation. So if we were to do it in the scope of a bank reconciliation, you have your checks from whatever was written internally on the left, and then you have your banks per the check on the right. And pretty much what this automation is going to do is it's going to compare your information and say, does it find a match? If so, basically write certain information onto the template that we have. And if it does not find a match, it's going to flag why that match was not found for a specific reason. So pretty much all that's going to be done is we have our template here. This is where our output is going to be generated to. So it's going to take the lines, it's going to write all of these different lines from our other Excel sheet onto this sheet in a nice organized template that we can then use for further reporting. So when I go back to my sheet here and I click Run Automation, it's going to run a macro that's been developed in the background. And it's basically looping through all of this information right now. You're going to get a message that says it's been completed. And now you have your information on your Excel spreadsheet. As you can see in the row that has the red highlight on it, that means that information, a match was not found. And it's basically flagging it and saying there wasn't a match found for this one and to do some further investigation on it. So it's kind of a quick example of how you can use automation to quickly run through a list. Something like that would probably take someone 15 or 20 minutes to run through and basically go through and just manually compare the list to see, do I have a match here? Do I not have a match here? Using the automation, you've taken a process that, again, would be 15, 20 minutes. It's very tedious. It's very specific on what you're looking for. So if you were doing it for a bunch of information, it would probably get very easy to have your eyes get tired of looking at that, and you could miss something, whereas the bot is not going to miss that. That, I'm going to hand things off to Vassilis to talk about some process automation.
Right. So here is an example of how a process would look like. And I don't want you to focus on the diagram, which might be a little bit busy. What I want you to see out of this diagram is the swim lanes, right? The horizontal groupings where these represent different departments that need to act on a certain process. And as I was saying earlier, it has to be a well-defined process to consider something to be a good candidate for automation. And in this example, you start with a request as to how we can go about an employee, hiring a new employee. And then you can see that depending on different criteria, which is the blocks of the red, they're going to show us as to a determination needs to happen. And the bot, really what's going to do is going to take the input, and based on the input, is going to decide what to do. And you can see, for example, that once it gathers the information on the first determination point, is going to send it either to town management or to operations, right? Because it depends on what the ask was, a different action needs to happen. Here's what I was saying, that, if it's an easy decision point, a bot can do that. And in such a case, we capture it and the bot actually does that. This is actual process that you see. It's a one that we do use internally here at AAFCPAs. It was a process where it was semi-manual, but we actually did re-engineer the whole process, and we said, you know what, enough with the old way of doing things. We need to move to, the new world and the new way of doing things with automation. And as such, we got it into a way to capture the data, store it in a nice centralized location, and use automation on the background to take this information and act as a person would do the routing, if I can call it. People will, in certain cases, they're going to go and take the information that they get from the system, and they're going to go and act on it. There's a decision point where they're actually going to eventually receive an approval kind of an email, and they need to act on it. And not only they need to act on it, if they forget to act on it, there is a reminder. So the tool is actually going to remind them, hey, you need to act on this, right? So And we know how that can go, right? With our busy lives, sometimes we forget something. We see it coming. We say, yeah, I'm going to act on it now. At the end of the day, you already forgot. Well, guess what? The tool is there to remind you. So this is one example that it was very successful for us as we put it in play. Now, as I said earlier, right, what makes a good RPA candidate? And one of the things that we did is we sat down and we said, what are the key questions that we need to ask and determine if a process that is completely manual today is a good candidate to be automated. So we actually came in and we came up with these questions. We created this rubric. You can actually use the QR code where you can get access to the rubric, to this rubric, and you can, on your own, you can actually go ahead and take it, answer the questions, and see if a process that you think it would be a good idea to automate is indeed a good candidate or not. Answering the questions, you put a value next to it, follow the guidelines as to what is the lower and the higher value. And then at the end, it sums up all the values that you put in, and it tells you if it's a good candidate or not. Now, with this specific example that I'm going to demonstrate here, I use the exact same rubric to demonstrate the capability. In this scenario, what's going to happen is a bot that we developed is going to go in our website, the AAFCPAs website, is going to navigate through the different the different sites of the website, to land to the one that has the link to the rubric. And it's going to provide the information that is required and eventually download the file and use the rubric by entering data in it. So without ado, let's go in and start the video and see how it's going to go. So here you see a quick review of what the bot looks like. It's a tool that we use, it's called UiPath. We just clicked it, so it starts up. It brings up the AAFCPA's website, and it starts navigating through the different pages. It goes into it, found what it needs, and now it provides the information that's required to download the rubric. So it's going in, puts the information there, and then the file gets downloaded. Now it opened up the file because we coded as to go and do that. And now it goes in and starts providing information. Obviously, in this scenario, it's just information that we'll put in for demonstration reasons, but think about it as to if this was a file that you need to get from a federal side or from some governmental side in any case, and you need to take it and manipulate it, right? This is how it would do it. We would go download the file, and then given certain instructions as to what it needs to do, it will go and start populating the file. And when it says populating, obviously, a human would do a similar scenario here, is to put in the values here, but it could be putting values, it could be changing the format, it could be utilizing data from a different file, and based on the information that another file, along with this one, you go and you do another activity, either populate this same file or populate another template you might have. So definitely, if you think about it, it really frees up your hands, right? Because if a person was to do this activity, it will take time. And in this case, it just finished up and you said, this is a good candidate. But the idea here is to understand that this can give us leverage and frees us up from these tasks that are really manual, that take time, is really tedious. And at some point they say, I don't want to do this anymore, right? So with that said, if I was to make a parallelism here, is look at the chair, right? The swivel chair sits right in the middle of all these applications that surround us. And if that was a person, you try to interface with all these systems, and it's a plethora of systems with a plethora of data and activities, tasks that we need to do. Well, again, if you take that and you say, maybe some of these actions, some of these activities can be automated, and you sort of like take yourself out of the swivel chair and you put a bot, right? Then you can imagine that the work that was left behind because you were busy doing these manual tasks, now it is done with a bot, and it's now for you, give you the chance to go and do the more important things, as we said earlier, right? The more important tasks on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, that are more important, and they have more value for you and your organization. So with that, we can move on to the next topic.
About AI and large language models a bunch today. So I'm going to go quickly on this slide, but there are different LLMs out there. ChatGPT is the big one. There's also Google's Gemini product. There's Microsoft Copilot, which we're going to see in a minute. But ChatGPT is probably the biggest, the most common. It has a bunch of different use cases, as we've seen throughout today. One of the big things that I like to use it for, and people internally in the firm like to use it for, is generating Excel formulas and also VBA code for a bunch of different tasks. And then there's also Copilot, which we are piloting in the firm right now, which is a really interesting product. It has a bunch of really cool use cases. So I have two quick examples. One is ChatGPT based, and then one is Copilot based. So let's jump right into those. All right. So this is going to be a quick example of how you can use ChatGPT to really simplify and speed up some of the work that you do. So what I have here is an Excel file. The Excel file is full of dummy data, of a bunch of sales data for all the different months of the year. And what I'm going to do is ask ChatGPT to create a VBA code, which is the code that runs in Excel that allows you to automate a bunch of different things. And I basically want to be able to combine all those different tabs without having to go in and copy and paste everything automatic or manually, so that I can create a tab with all of my information that's called a summary. And if you notice, when I go back to the actual data, you'll notice that the dates in there are in a date format where there's also a timestamp on it. So I want to eliminate that. So pretty much what I've done is I have a prompt that I wrote, and I'm telling ChatGPT, I have 12 different tabs in here. Each tab is a different month. I want to pull all those tabs onto a summary tab, and I also want to change the date stamp. What it's going to do is take my prompt, and it's going to generate a VBA code that can do that in Excel. If you've never dealt with VBA code before or have no idea what it is, that's fine, because ChatGPT is not only going to generate this code for you, it's also going to tell you exactly how to use it. So as you can see on the screen here, it's writing this code for me. And then after it writes the code, it's going to tell me exactly step by step, what do I do with that code? And again, that's really helpful if you don't know how this works or you're new to Excel. It's really a good place to start, even learning simple formulas that are not nearly as complex as this. But it shows you how you can get into really complex stuff without having a background. I don't have a computer science background. I have an accounting background, but I know how to put prompts into ChatGPT that will give me the outputs that I want. So now that it has finished generating that code, and it also gave me the information at the bottom of how to use that, I'm going to copy that code. I'm going to come over. I'm going to follow my instructions that ChatGPT told me. I'm going to paste it into my Excel here. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to run this code. And pretty much what it's going to do is create a new tab for me called Summary, and it's going to have all that information that I want, and it's also going to reformat those dates for me. So now I have all 12 months of information in a simple table ready that I can do any additional analysis on. Now, if I wanted to take this one step further and I want to be able to break things down by month and say I don't know what the Excel formula is to pull the value of a month out of a date field. Let's go back to ChatGPT, and I can ask it to do that. So right there, I'm saying, let's pull the month out of this. And we know exactly how our date is formatted in our Excel document. So if we just go back to ChatGPT, I put another prompt in there, and I basically just say, I want to pull the month out of a date that's formatted like month, month, day, day, year, 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 year. I asked ChatGPT for that, and it's now going to give me the Excel formula to do this. So it's really great if you're not super well versed in Excel, but you can put into text what you want to do, and you just don't know the exact formula that's going to do that for you. So if you go, you grab that formula, and you copy it right in, you now have your months. So a quick, easy example of how you can use ChatGPT to really help you out in Excel on a day-to-day basis. Our next example here is using Microsoft Copilot. Screen all day where it has our theme built into it. And what I'm going to do is use Microsoft Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI tool that is built directly onto their Microsoft 365 platform, to basically create a PowerPoint when I have a Word document that already has what I'm looking for in it. So in this example, I have taken my template PowerPoint, I've saved a copy of it, and I'm now going to go in and open Copilot up, and I'm going to ask Copilot to create a PowerPoint based off of a specific Word document. That Word document does have to be saved in a OneDrive location in order for Copilot to access it. That's how Copilot works in general, is everything needs to be saved in a OneDrive location in order for Copilot to work with it. But basically what I have done is said, create a presentation from this file. All the file contains is a bunch of fake financial information that I actually used ChatGPT to create. I told ChatGPT to basically give me an executive summary that I would present to a board of directors with my Q2 financial data. So it's all dummy data that was generated through ChatGPT, and now Copilot is reading the Word document that I have put that in, and it's going through, it's kind of identifying all of the different topics that are covered in that document. And in a minute, it's going to take this PowerPoint presentation and completely redo it based off the information in that Word document. So this is a really great example of how you can use the power of AI for content generation. And the PowerPoint presentation that comes out of this is not going to be perfect, but it's going to be pretty good, where you can take this as a starting point and then use that to get to your final product. So it takes a little bit of time as it goes through and reads this document, but shortly it's going to go through, change all of the slides, and then I will quickly click through all of the slides, and you'll see that it's now pulled the financial information from my Word document into the actual PowerPoint. And this can be used, again, with Word documents. You can also do it more or less backwards and take a PowerPoint and have a Word document summarized based off of that PowerPoint. It also has use cases in Outlook and Teams, so it can record Teams messages and automatically create a transcription of those meeting notes for you, and you can interact with those notes. So as you can see, we now have an updated PowerPoint. And as you go through, you're going to start to see all this different financial data that was in my Word document that is now on the PowerPoint. And it only took a couple of minutes. Whereas if you were to do this manually, it would take a lot more time to generate these slides. And then from there, you can go in, make any adjustments to the slides that you need, but everything is right there for you. It also generates the speaker notes. So if I were to open up the speaker notes, you'd see the speaker notes and exactly where in the Word document any of that information came from. With that, we are going to move on to our next polling question. So, what are the biggest challenges your organization faces in implementing automation?
Yeah, and while you guys trying to answer the poll here, what we'd like to do here is wrap up also. And what we would like you to get out of this today is really the technologies there has made quite a big advancements. They help us out, with the automation. Help us out, make our life easier, right? Artificial intelligence is coming pretty hard and fast, and we definitely will need to utilize it. carefully, but definitely we need to do so. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for staying up with us and listening to our session. And we'll talk again later with any questions.
Thank you.